Whenever you hear about the Horus heresy, you know that time when Horus, favorite Primarch son of the God Emperor of mankind, committed a heresy so terrible, he burned half the galaxy and turned over 1 million space marines to the service of chaos. A big question always comes up: why did the Horus heresy happen? Was it really just daddy issues, or did it have to do with the Emperor lying to every single one of his Primarch sons? Not just lying and keeping a secret, but going behind their backs and receiving godlike power from the same lie. The God Emperor lied about the existence of chaos. He lied about his deal with the actual chaos gods. Hell, he even lied to himself and almost became a chaos god by accident. If he had told Magnus, Horus, or even Rabute Gilliman of the existence of chaos, could the Horus heresy have been prevented? Did trillions of humans have to die? If the Emperor had not lied, would we even need to live in the grim darkness of the far future? Well, in today's video, we are going to cover all of that and a whole lot more. We will cover what the Emperor tried to cover up, what kind of deal he made with the Chaos Gods. We will take a look at the in-universe theory as to why the Emperor kept it to himself and Malcador. Did he do so to protect us, or was it more a battle of the egos, and he wanted to make sure he would be the only one with the power to create Primarchs and kill demons? As per usual, all sources used will be shown in the bottom left hand corner throughout the video, just in case you want to check the lore I have used, or want to learn even more about the Emperor's deal with chaos after you've watched this deep dive. Alright, enough talking, let's get into the lore. When the Emperor began his master plan to reconquer the galaxy in the name of human dominion, he very quickly came across a massive problem. He could not do it himself, so he would have to go out of his way and make 20 demigod sons, alongside 20 biologically engineered superhuman legions, to conquer the entire galaxy in an acceptable time frame. However, to make these Primarch sons, a deal with an ancient evil had to be made. The Emperor wanted to ascend humanity into a time of prosperity and immortality. Chaos and the Warp were his greatest enemies, but in this time of conquest, a deal had to be struck. The Emperor traveled to Molag, entered the gate deep underneath an ancient cavern, and made a deal with chaos. He would receive the fire of the Warp, like the fire stolen by Prometheus in ancient Greek mythology, and in return, he would inform humanity of the power of chaos, so they too could serve the ancient primordial annihilator. The Emperor came back, he had the fire and created 20 sons. He made his space marines and he conquered the galaxy in what is known as the Great Crusade. But instead of holding his end of the deal, the Emperor betrayed the Chaos Gods. He used their fire, but informed no one of chaos. Not just that, he went out of his way to outlaw any and all religions, cults, churches, and spiritual gatherings. Chaos would have no handhold in this reality. Yet chaos is not stupid, it's a malign and evil prescience that noticed this betrayal. Through the likes of Erebus, Lorgar and Horus, half the sons of the Emperor were turned against him. The galaxy would be informed of the existence of chaos, and in his hubris of betraying the Chaos Gods, the galaxy would burn. So would the Emperor have been better off if he had informed his sons of his deal with chaos and the general existence of gods? Would they have listened to him, taken his warnings of their malign evil, understood the sacrifice he made, and stayed on his side to fulfill his dreams? Or would this revelation have sent the likes of Horus into such utter despair that they would have turned traitor anyway? Alright, with that dramatic introduction out of the way, let's get into part 1. What did the Emperor lie about? Was it to protect us, or was there something more to it? To answer this question, I am immediately opening up with an amazing excerpt from the first Heretic. In this novel, Argoltal is sent out by Lorgar to the Eye of Terror to discover if there are more gods besides the false Emperor. After entering the Eye, Argoltal and his crew are essentially frozen in time for what feels like an eternity. They become hungry and start eating crew members. They become thirsty, so they start sipping blood, engine fuel and coolants. But as this desperation hits, demons start to visit them. Right as Argoltal is about to return to Lorgar with his revelations that the gods of chaos are real, he is hit with a vision by the demon known as Ingetel. The question we must ask ourselves, Chaplain Zaven spoke as he stroked the surface of the pot marked 17, is why these incubators are shielded against, say it, Zaven smiled, against demons. Torgal joined the chaplain before Lorgar's pod. He stared inside at the slumbering infant for some time. I believe I know. These children are almost grown to the point of birth. Demon? Spirit? I am here. Torgal looked acutely uncomfortable interacting with the disembodied voice. The legions tell the tale of the Emperor's 20 sons being cast into the heavens by some great tragedy, some flaw in their creation process. You have been raised with the tales of the Primarchs that lead your legions, but you have been fed centuries of lies. In a matter of moments, you will witness the truth. The Anathema dealt with the powers of the Warp long before he left Earth on the Great Crusade. The Anathema desired mighty sons, and the gods granted him the lore to forge them, with a union of divine genetics and psychic sorcery. He came to my masters, hungry for answers, beseeching the gods for power. With the lore they gave him, he shaped his 20 sons. But treacheries have occurred. Oaths, sworn in blood and paid in soul, have been broken. The Anathema now refuses to show humanity the primordial truth, and the gods of the Warp grow wrathful. The Anathema is keeping its 20 Primarch sons, and paying no price to the powers that gifted him with the knowledge to shape them. Zaven gripped the handrail to keep going to his knees. Our father, all of our fathers, are the spawn of ancient blood rituals and forbidden science. Argoltal couldn't keep from laughing. The Emperor that denies all forms of divinity shaped his own sons with the blessing of forgotten gods. Prayers and sorcery are written upon their gestation pods. This is the most glorious madness. So yeah, that is the first in-lore reaction to figuring it out. Holy damn, the Emperor used chaos to make the Primarchs. He stole their power, and like a hypocrite, immediately banned religion right after. The Imperial Truth preached that there are no gods. The Great Crusade was about bringing illumination to the far corners of the galaxy. Now this very crusade was afraid of knowledge. The more warriors like Garfield Loken learned, the more they and others questioned. The Emperor held his subjects in a tight noose of control and lies, and those who knew too much might accidentally disappear once the Sigillites' attention fell onto them. So the Emperor definitely tried to hide this deal. He knew something that nobody else knew, and maybe he had actual good reasons for that. Because think about it. If the Emperor were to inform the entire galaxy of the existence of chaos, wouldn't billions of people immediately switch sides? If you heard of a real-life power that could make you the richest, sexiest, strongest or smartest man alive, wouldn't you take it? Well, before we go down that rabbit hole, there is another side to this theory that we need to discuss before I can give a full and coherent answer. Did the Emperor lie for his own power? As in, did he lie so he would be the only one in existence with this level of power and knowledge? While I have covered this story in depth in my How Strong is the Emperor video, let's just say he is capable of exterminating a planet full of super powerful orcs with his psychic might alone. The Emperor didn't really need this power at all. He was already strong enough by himself. But yes, the Emperor did lie about how strong he actually was. Later, during the heresy, when the siege of Terra was nearing its end, the Emperor of Mankind boarded the Vengeful Spirit. He was growing with power, and it was enough to make the ancient four gods flinch in pain. The Emperor had stolen their fire, used it to keep them at bay for millennia, and now, when forced to confront them, he would burn them. For the Emperor, being in the Warp, surrounded by chaos and made to fight it, was no different than pouring fuel onto a fire. This display of power was so raw and fiery that even one of the elite Heteran Custodes Guard thought to himself, "So this is hell." We even learned that after the titanic clash between Horus and the Emperor ended, the warp was calmed. The master of mankind was dying, Horus was utterly devastated, and the Chaos Gods themselves were so wounded they fell into a deep sleep. From this, we can pretty accurately say that the Emperor lied about his power so the Chaos Gods would be caught off guard by what he could actually do. If nobody, not the Primarchs, Chaos Gods, or hell, even the Custodes, knew what he was truly capable of, he could pull out a victory in the worst of circumstances. But years before this fight between Horus and the Emperor, Horus had already been warned of this power, and in his eyes, it wasn't about defeating chaos, it was about ego. He wanted to ensure that Horus could never surpass him. At least, that is what a disguised Erebus told him, as seen in False Gods. "He would never do such a thing," Horus cried out loud. "You underestimate his lust for power, my friend," said the disguised Erebus as they made their way back towards the steps that led them down into the laboratory floor. "The gods of the warp are powerful, but they do not understand this material universe, and the Emperor was able to betray them, stealing away their power for himself. In creating you, he passed on but a tiny measure of that power." Horus felt his breath come in short, painful bursts. He wanted to deny the Marine's words, but part of him knew that this was no lie. Like any other man, his future was uncertain, but his past had always been his own. His glories in life had been forged with his own two hands, but even now, they were being stripped away from him by the Emperor's treachery. "So we are tainted," whispered Horus, "all of us." "Tainted? No," said the fixed Janus, shaking his head. "The power of the warp simply is. Used wisely and by a man of power, it can be a weapon like no other. It can be mastered, and it can be a powerful tool for one with the will to use it." "Then why did the Emperor not use it well?" "Because he was weak," said Sejanus, leaning in close to Horus. "Unlike you, he lacked the will to master it, and the gods of the warp do not take kindly to those who betray them. The Emperor has taken a measure of their power for himself, but they struck back at him. How? You will see. With the power he stole from them, he was too powerful for them to attack directly, but they had foreseen a measure of his plans, and they struck at what he needed most to realize those plans. The Primarchs? The Primarchs, agreed Sejanus. Erebus had woven a convincing story, a powerful tale of the deepest betrayals. Horus was no mere man, however. He was not a normal being you could deceive. At first, the War Master was glad to see his beloved son, but he was quick to realize it was not actually Sejanus, and by the time his brother Magnus arrived, Horus had already made his decision. Neither Erebus nor Magnus could hold sway over Horus. On the one hand, he was a brother who, by his presence, broke the Emperor's edicts. What words of loyalty uttered by Magnus can hold true weight if he himself is not loyal? And what lies of the serpent Erebus could ever be convincing? Horus would see one brutal truth, however. The Emperor had lied. Between the lies of Chaos, the lies of his father, and the hypocrisy of Magnus, which side would be the closest to the truth? Well, to Horus, the closest truth would be that of Chaos. Entities so powerful that he agreed with the word-bearers that there is no better word for them than gods. Horus would continue to unravel the truth as he began his heresy. From Molech to Terra, the War Master found no truth, as truth is often the very first casualty of war. Instead, he found the supremacy and utter annihilation of Chaos. Horus was the most warlike Primarch. He might lack the wrath of Angron, brutal intelligence of Perturabo, or unbreakable will of Dorn, but he was still chosen to be the War Master. Horus sided with those he believed could win. When Leman Russ stabbed him with the Dionysian spear, there was no illumination to bring to Horus. Molech and Davin had already done that for him. To Horus, the Emperor was nothing but a magician, a man selling tricks and lies. During Horus's confrontation with Garfil Loken, who came to understand the Emperor better than any other Astartes, Loken would praise the Emperor for being a magician. The art was to make the impossible look easy, to put on a show, while behind the scenes, everything was makeshift and on the edge of falling apart. The Emperor lied about his power, but his lies were to protect the very soul of mankind. Later, during the End in the Depth Volume 3, Loken would try to convince his father once again of the Emperor's righteous decisions to lie about chaos, but once again, Horus would not hear it. "Chaos will spare no one," says Loken. "Chaos cares not. You are a puppet of its whim. It has beguiled you simply to perform one deed, to remove the one man it feared. Yes, the Emperor stole fire from Chaos and used its power against it, but he always knew that he could not take it whole, for it would consume him. You mocked him for lacking the courage to do what you have done, but it wasn't a lack of courage, it was an act of supreme will. You have embraced Chaos whole and thus given exactly what it wanted. You have no power of your own, you think you do, but it's just an illusion. He opposed Chaos at every turn and rejected every lie and promise it threw at him, of improvisation and persistence. So his life, like his fight with you, was a scrappy, messy brawl of persistence. You have accepted them all, which is why your path seems so strong and clear. It is, you ungrateful fool. Then show me, show it to me, tell me what it is. I have nothing to prove to you. Not to me, to yourself. Make no mistake, that is what you told me years ago. Make no mistake. Well, father, see your own mistake for what it is. Your path is a grim darkness, where there is only war and no place for mankind. There is no mistake. Look at me, Loken. See what I am. He cries and claps his hand against his chest. I am made mighty beyond all measure by the warp. I am transfigured and ascendant. I am a god, boy. A mighty god. And gods do not make mistakes. We are mighty because we are right. We are not right because we are mighty. Val the hour when that reversal becomes our credo. So Horus, Loken, Lorgar and Magnus figured it out very early on. The Emperor had stolen power from Chaos and had used it to make the Primarchs, but then refused to uphold his part of the deal. But as we saw, every person in the setting has a wildly different reaction to this revelation. So what did the other Primarchs know? And if they did know, why didn't they tell any of their brothers? Or did they realize that the Emperor was right not to tell anyone? In the novel Lost and the Damned, we learn from Malcador that only one of the Primarchs was ever told about Chaos. During this conversation, Sanguinius, Dorn and the Khan question who it is. They quickly find out it is none of those present. Sanguinius tried to reason that if more of the Primarchs were told, then so much could have been prevented. Malcador, however, quickly reminds him that there was room for one more Red Angel among the forces of Chaos. Words that made Sanguinius visibly turn pale. Just a quick reminder for those who may have forgotten, Erebus concocted a plan to turn Sanguinius into a demon known as the Red Angel, a plan Sanguinius actually fell for, but by the heroic actions of an apothecary named Meros, Sanguinius was spared from this dark fate. And yes, Sanguinius deeply understands the sacrifice of his son and just how close he came to falling to chaos. But what do the other Primarchs know? We will be skipping Horus as we already covered him in depth. Lorgar is also a Primarch we can skip, as he discovered chaos during the novel First Heretic. But to keep in line with the traitor Primarchs first, let's continue with Magnus. We know that Magnus was relentless in his pursuit of chaos, and we know that the first time he made proper contact with it, he, out of desperation, immediately accepted its gifts. Sure, the situation was rather drastic. He was trying to save his legion from a genetic disease. But then a couple of centuries later, he does it again when he's trying to contact the Emperor after Horus falls to chaos. So no matter what, if Magnus was told of chaos, he would have fallen nearly immediately due to his own hubris. This is also definitely a factor as to why he was banned from using sorcery by the Emperor. Perturabo, Angron and Curse are also Primarchs who would not have been told. Let's be honest here, Angron genuinely does not care. He also doesn't like his librarians, even though he did not disband them after Nicaea. Perturabo was also not told. As we know, he outright hates chaos every time he sees it during the heresy. He underestimates it on nearly every occasion, and by the end of the Scouring, he would even try to master it and control it like a weapon. Conrad Curse, on the other hand, is a highly troubled individual and would blame the Emperor for everything that has happened, so telling him would just make this worse. On to our next three Primarchs, Mortarion, Fulgrim and Alpharius. Mortarion definitely was not told. Much like Perturabo, he has a strong contempt for anything sorcerous in nature, and both during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy, he tried to get the Emperor and Warmaster to ban its use. When it comes to the remaining traitor Primarchs, this only leaves us with Alpharius, who I consider a serious candidate, but I want to cover him together with a more loyalist candidate. Fulgrim, on the other hand, could have also been an interesting contender. However, his actions during the early Horus Heresy, especially surrounding Isfahan, shows me that he had no idea, and so was not told. Fulgrim willingly let his sons be mutilated, falls under the influence of a throbbing sword, and when confronted by a demon, he feels nothing but the misery of having killed Ferrus Manus. Moving on to the Loyalists, we already went over Sanguinius, Dorn and Jagatai Khan, where Malcador outright states that none of them have been told. So starting with Robute Guilliman, Ferrus Manus and Vulcan. Obviously, Robute Guilliman understood very little of the Warp, both when the heresy began, during and after. When fighting the Wordbearers at Cult, he was woefully under-equipped to fight them. He and the Ultramarines had to learn how to combat chaos through trial and error. Vulcan is another Primarch I would argue was left in the dark, due to his reaction when he entered the Webway. He has a lot of issues with what the Emperor made. It was crude, done too fast, and had way too many shortcuts. I think that if Vulcan was told of chaos, he would have had a very different reaction to what he saw and experienced, and maybe he would even have brought it up to Curse. Ferrus Manus, I want to argue, is very much like Dorn, in that he is a master of the Materium. When Dorn and Malcador talk about the Warp, Malcador points out that if Dorn were told, he would have fallen to it. Not because he is weak or has a flaw, but because it was not what he was created for. Dorn would try to master the Warp as though it was the Immaterium, and this is a pathway to insanity. What is also important to know is that when Sanguinius spoke to Ferrus Manus aboard the Vengeful Spirit, the Gorgon seemed to have learned of chaos the hard way, and he did not like it. Now onto the last three Loyalist Primarchs, which I think all have a good claim for being told about chaos. Starting with Corvus Corax, there are two arguments I have that are pro, and one that sadly disproves everything. The first argument is that Corax was the only Primarch to distrust Horus and outright hit him once, because Horus was willing to sacrifice the Raven Guard for his own glory. As a whole, Corax was rather critical of his brothers. He was willing to work with them and trust them, but at the same time, he seemed overly suspicious of all of them. Another pro-argument is the trust between Corax and the Emperor in the novel Deliverance Lost. While not truly transparent, Corax was given the knowledge and tools to resurrect his legion, something which only went south because of the Alpha Legion. Yet both of these arguments fall apart when we look at what Corax does and sees through the Horus Heresy. He is surprised at every turn, he hates chaos with a passion, but he has no idea on how to actually fight it. And when the heresy ends, it takes him many millennia inside the warp to realize how truly powerful he actually is. Moving on to Leman Russ. Among the Primarchs, few had the same relation with the Emperor as Leman Russ. He was not the first found like Horus, he was not the first created Primarch like Lion, nor was he chosen to be the Praetorian of Terra like Dorn, but he served as the Emperor's executioner. When the Emperor and Grey Crusade had to face one of the worst enemies in existence, known as the Rangdan, Russ was right up there with Lion to fight them, and it's also good to remember, the Space Wolves being called the Emperor's executioners is not an honor. It is an insult and a dark reminder of the Rangdan genocides from when Russ's legion executed potentially corrupted Imperials. Russ was also trusted to arrest Magnus and given the Dionysian spear I mentioned earlier. But was Russ told of chaos? I don't think so, because he made a lot of mistakes and had no idea that Horus was corrupted by the Chaos Gods. Russ was tricked into attacking Magnus not only by Horus, but also by the direct involvement of the Chaos Gods, tricking him into thinking that Magnus was spying on him. Russ tried to send a message to Magnus that he was willing to ignore the orders of Horus as long as Magnus came out and surrendered himself directly. But it was not a spy of Magnus, it was all a massive misdirection, so the message was never sent. Russ also hesitated with his fight against Horus. While there was much love between them, if Russ understood chaos, I don't think he would have hesitated. Another thing to point out was that Russ, at the end of the heresy, believed himself to be an utter failure, which required the Emperor himself to cheer him back up. So now that we have covered all of that, let's talk about who, in my opinion, were trusted with knowing about chaos. I first want to talk about Lionel Johnson. We all know why the Emperor created the Dark Angels. This legion was created to not just defeat, but to outright destroy an enemy, to the point history remembers nothing but their name. Lionel Johnson also once shared with one of his sons how, in his dreams, beasts come and offer him things. To name but one example was the title of War Master, to be the first among equals. He reflected on these dreams after being offered help by the Alpha Legion during the Rangdan genocides, which would see the Lion become War Master in the future. Although a captain was willing to accept this offer, the Lion was not. He told his son that the offers in his dreams change, but his answer never does. When taking into account that the Lion came from Caliban, which was infested by the Warp, is it too hard to believe that the Lion was told about chaos? He even read some of the books held by the Knights of Lupus, who had fallen to chaos. If we also add the event from Lion Son of the Forest, it seems pretty clear what the answer is. Just a quick reminder, the Lion during this novel outright forgives any of the fallen who have not given into chaos and executes those who have. Personally, I think we might get to see more evidence of this as the Scouring series unfolds, and as we get to hopefully see more of the Lion in the modern era. So yeah, the Lion is a strong contender, but the Scouring will give us any actual proof if this is the case, which leaves us with two more brothers, Alpharius and Omegon. I primarily want to talk about the novels Legion and Alpharius Head of the Hydra, starting with Alpharius Head of the Hydra. This novel claims that Alpharius was never swept away like his brothers, something he also says is a lie, but it is here that Legion comes in. In this novel, Alpharius and Omegon speak to the Cabal, a Xenos organization that is seeking to let Horus win. and through that have chaos turn in on itself, destroy humanity, and then destroy itself. Alpharius and Omegon are not convinced that to beat chaos, Horus has to win. If Horus loses, what we see in 40k is still going to happen. But not just that, another 10,000 years into the future, the galaxy will face utter primordial annihilation. While not outright stated, it seems that they believe the Dark King will ascend in 10 to 20,000 years after the heresy, and will then destroy everything. But what does this mean for our heroes? Well, because the Alpha Legion are highly mysterious, quick on the double crossing, and the fact that the Cabal was destroyed by Eldrad, it's kind of a mess if you ask me. On one hand, you could argue that one or both Primarchs were taught about chaos, and that they were not corrupted, but instead convinced to join the Cabal, which could be a decision fueled by their understanding of chaos. But on the other hand, you could argue that it is because the Alpha Legion do not understand chaos, that they were convinced to join the Cabal to find out. While I personally lean more towards Lionel Johnson as the one who was taught about chaos, I still think the Alpha Legion have a very good shot at it as well. I would love to hear what you guys think about this dilemma down in the comment section below. Who do you think was outright told about chaos by the Emperor and Malcador? Also, quick mention, the reason the Lost Primarchs are not included in this list is that Malcador would not even have brought them up if that were the case. When a younger Horus once tried to utter one of his Lost Brothers' names, he was immediately choked to near death by the Sigillite. Now moving on, what did the Chaos Gods think of this betrayal, of their deal with the Emperor? Do we have any in-lore examples of their actual opinions on him? When Horus fights the Emperor, the leader of mankind says a handful of things that betray how he truly feels. He repeatedly asks Horus, why? As in, why did you betray me? Why did you join chaos? Something the traitor finds confounding and even frustrating. The master of mankind even says, "You killed my son," which Horus thinks means Sanguinius, but in truth, he meant not just Sanguinius, but Horus, Ferrus, all of them taken away by the Chaos Gods. Perhaps the best example of just how much the Emperor screwed over chaos can be seen in Mortis. It is noon in the desert. It has been noon here for all time. It is fixed at that point, at the idea of heat beating down and light giving no room for shadows. The eyes of the man beneath the tree have closed to slits. Above him, the dry branches of the tree rattle. His shape here is not truth. It is just a reflection of his nature at that moment. Pain and suffering, and the relentless hammer of vast forces crushing in on him. His skin is a parchment pulled thin across his skull. Cracks have opened on his brow and cheeks. Dried blisters cling to his lips. He has not moved for a long time, longer than a lifetime. The scoop in the ground, where water rose from the tree roots, is dry. There is a realm of thirst now. There is no water anymore. Just his will pushing against the idea of this desert, holding it back from him and the only tree that gives it any shade. The rattle of the first snake rises into the air. The man's eyes open a fraction wider. The serpent sits on the cracked earth. Its head is raised, its black eyes unblinking. As the man looks at it, a tongue flicks out to taste the air. Its scales are blue, the color of an ocean under the sun. It flicks its tail, and then the dry rattle rises. The man meets its gaze. From behind the serpent, the head of another rises. The scales of this one are green of summer forest, and the light draws a gleam of copper from a bone crest. It hisses. The fangs inside its pink mouth are black, needle splinters of night. Another hiss, and the man has to open his eyes and turn to see the third and fourth shapes gliding over the ground behind him. there will be 2 more, he knows, lying still, out of sight, coiled in the dust, like a promise that is in truth a threat. Horus begins to speak, demanding to know why his father lied. He has so much to say, but the man beneath the tree does not listen, his attention focused on the serpents. The man beneath the tree opens his mouth, skin splits on his lips. "You have lied to him," he says, and the voice holds no crack or note of the wasting that marks his face. His eyes are on the serpents, and they rear up at the words, mouths open, fangs showing, eyes black pearls in the glare. "When he sees what you have made him, there will be nothing left of him for you. Nothing. You create only hollow things. You make a desolation of hope, and a wasteland of the future." The man beneath the tree coughs, the sound a rattle in a dry throat. "He shall undo you. I made him. I know him, his strengths and his flaws. To you, he's only a slave, but he is still my son." Horus grows enraged with his father, but the Emperor would rise, beat back the gods with fire, and declare to them that all of this shall end. And it has. Well, the Horus heresy at least. As revenge, the Chaos Gods took half of the Emperor's sons, shattered his dreams, and practically killed him. To this very day, they continue to wage war into eternity. Untold trillions march to their deaths, their feet following the tune of the laughter of thirsting gods. Even in the 42nd millennium, the Chaos Gods are far from done with humanity, its master and all of his creations. And they remember the promise, they want their payment, and they will get it, no matter what it might cost. And so we conclude our story. The great lie of the Emperor and almost all of its consequences have played out. Now the story will continue by those who inherited this broken Imperium. Where will Rabute Gilliman and Lionel Johnson lead the Imperium? Will they create a lasting golden age? Will they tell humanity of the deal the Emperor made? Or will they only make the long death of humanity last even longer? It's hard to tell. Everything I learned while researching this video left me with more questions than answers. One thing that I can conclude, however, is that the Emperor could not tell his sons or the Imperium about chaos. To have done so would have given the ruinous powers everything they wanted, instead of forcing them to fight and squabble for what was promised to them so long ago. In a way, by the Emperor not telling humanity of their existence, he made the Chaos Gods blame each other for this betrayal, taking their attention away from our reality. But what do you think of all of this? Should the Emperor have told his sons of the dangers of chaos? Should he have betrayed the Chaos Gods and kept humanity in the dark like he wanted? Was this the best choice? Was this truly the only way to save the human soul? Let me know your comments, concerns, suggestions, theories and ideas down in the comment section below. If you think I deserved it with this video, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. It helps push this video into the algorithm and it would make me very happy. Thank you for watching and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Bye bye.